The modern spiritual scene is to some degree where spirit, that truth that words like enlightenment and awakening is meant to convey, that deeper truth, that there's a lot of teachings now that are meant to kind of make that resonant spark of recognition happen. It could be awakening. It could be just a deeper understanding about something. Because awakening's not everything, by the way. Nor does it solve every issue of life. Nor is it the answer to everything. It's probably the most fundamental realization that we can have in life, but it's not a cure-all. And so what we have a lot, there's a lot of teachings. I put them out myself because I think they're useful and hopefully have some transformational power in them, of like things that are like almost, if you think about like the image that I had. It came to me last night, and this might sound kind of cliche to some of you, so pardon me if it sounds cliche, but it's the image that came to me. It's almost like there's certain spiritual teachings, if you think of like a rose bush or something, that are like the flowers, that are like the roses. They're like the capping teachings, or in Tibetan Buddhism would think of like the pith teachings, the pith, the essence, the teachings that are meant to spark a kind of awakening. And those are like, they're like the flower on a rose bush. And of course, our attention tends to go to the flower. And so it used to be not that long ago, actually, 30 years ago, and the farther you go back in time, the more true this becomes, that those kinds of teachings, the teachings that were really meant to kind of spark these fundamental shifts of being, were very often reserved. They weren't given out to everybody. They were, in a certain sense, sort of metaphorically kept under lock and key. And you kind of had to earn them. And not because earning them innately had great value, but because there was a knowledge, because these came out of the great spiritual traditions, the great religious traditions, contemplative traditions, I should say, the great contemplative dimensions of the religious traditions, that knew that there was this whole foundation that was very, very important part of spirituality. And without that foundation, you could go straight to the little pith teachings, pluck the flower, or try to awaken the flower, open it up. But the foundation, the stem, the leaves, the roots, those are all important. Without those, there is no flower. And most all these traditions that I'm aware of, that I've investigated, all had this kind of understanding. Now that's a really useful and potent thing. That's also a kind of enclosing structure, right? That can get heavily laden down with a whole lot of structure. And you can build foundation forever and never get to the awakening part. You can start believing that awakening is meant to happen in 10 lifetimes or whatever, instead of realizing that it's imminently available. And yet, these old traditions had a lot of foundational stuff. So you'd have to really commit yourself. You have to commit yourself to not only a teaching, but more importantly, a kind of practice, usually for many years, before you'd get access to these very deep teachings. Well, that's all changed now for the most part. That spirituality itself has sort of broken out of the confines of its religious containers. And part of that's wonderful, right? Because you no longer have to approach spirituality strictly through the container of the old religious structures. And there's something liberating and freeing in it. And it has made the transformation of consciousness, I think, much more available in one sense, not in every sense. And that's very positive. On the other hand, it can be easily uprooted from an understanding, a deeper understanding of awakening or enlightenment. And awakening or enlightenment isn't just the plucking of the flower off the top of the rose bush, the moment of revelatory spiritual awakening, as amazing and life-changing as that often is. But it also involves, if it's deep, if it's profound, the whole structure of being. It's not simply all of which doesn't unfold because we have a moment of spiritual awakening. Like I said, that moment will be transformative and revelatory to varying degrees.